take some time to read the question, take like 2 minutes and go over it. And after you've read the question, we're going to start discussing it. So let's start discussing it. So the kth int list implements an iterator, right? So you already know that we need to be overriding has next and next. And it implements iterator of integer. So you also know that that's why we're returning integer over here. And this is done in a slightly unconventional way in which you have three instance variables defined. One is a public int k, which is the number that you want to skip by when you're going over this list. And you have an int list curl list, which is just what you want to be iterating on. And then you also have a variable known as has next, which is automatically set to true. And in your has next function, you're just returning this dot has next. So that automatically makes you think, okay, in the integer next function, you need to be filtering through and maybe changing has next if has next is no longer true, right? Because the Boolean has next function never changes that. So the first thing we should be checking for is my curl list null? And what is the result of has next? If has next returns false, then we want to throw an exception. More specifically, we want to throw the throw new no such element exception. Right? Now we proceed as if curl list is not null. So we assign an integer item, which is equal to curl list dot item. Now let's think through this. So if you have a list that looks like 1, 2, 3, and then 4, we want to be skipping over some of the items in the list, right? We want to return, okay, to be more loyal to the example that we have, we want to return this first, and then we want to skip, when our k is equal to 2, we want to skip 2 items. So we now skip 1 over here, and then the next one we should return is 2. We skip this, the next one we should return is 4, right? So this, the first element should always be returned. So no matter what you do to make sure that you're eliminating the, like whatever k items, you know that you should be returning item, where this item is the same as what you got over here, right? Simply because if you do skip over, if you do iterate over curl list, you move this forward, you want to still return the first element in the list. In this case, it's 0. This also tells us another cool thing, which is that you basically want to build this functionality such that you're always on the item that you want to return. So you start over here. When you're done with this stuff, you should end up over here, simply because that's the item that you plan on returning. Questions on that? Type them in the chat, please.
I have a quick questions about the first line, because
Right.
why we need curl is equal to null? Because if the has net is equal to both, so it's absolutely cannot be null.
So if you look into the hasNext function that has been provided, it returns this dot hasNext, right? And
yeah.
say if you were originally passed in a null list, then hasNext does not account for the fact that the first list, that the original list that was passed in, which is like int list I, if you look at the constructor, was null, because it's automatically set to true.
Oh, I see. So if the curl list is equal to null, so the has next is equal to true, right?
Right. Someone asked, could we have
Okay.
said curl list dot first? Oh yeah, sorry. could we have said curl list first instead of curl list item? And thank you for someone who responded in the chat, which it depends on how the int list is implemented. So if the int list has instance variable known as first, then you use int list first. But because in this like situation, we're considering that the instance variable name is item, we're returning item. Okay, so now we need to actually write what this does. And what we do know is that it should always move our pointer to the kth item that we want to be returning. So let's do this via a loop, right? Let's have a loop that starts at 0 and then it goes up to k, and you iterate through I, right? And now you want to move forward in the curl list. If you're here, you want to go here. And you can do that by just changing what curl list points to. So you do curl list equals curl list dot next. Is everyone clear on that? Just to explain it. So we start with our curl list pointing here. And now in order to move our curl list forward, we basically change curl list to what curl list dot next is, which is pointing to this block over here. So we advance our pointer from 0, like this node, to this node. And now a problem that we might encounter is that there is a chance that this is over, that we have null. I'll get to the questions in the chat in a second. So now what we need to do is we need to check if curl list is equal to null. That means we have our list is like now come to an end and we can't iterate through it anymore. We should be changing our has next to be false, right? Simply now, since we don't no longer have the next item in the list, we can't have a has next. And now we also just return item in this case. Simply because if you had a situation which looked like this, you would just return 4 and then you would exit out.
So why we check the curl list equal to null? Can we check curl list dot next equal to null? Because we are trying to assign the false to the has next, right?
Right.
I think
so you're essentially, sorry?
I think
Someone
it's
said
arbitrary. Something? Whether you're checking next or checking the current, it's arbitrary.
Yeah, so that is correct. You need to switch up the order of your function a little bit, but you can check if curl list.next is equal to null, and you just need to make sure that you're always still just returning item. I think the one scenario in which curl list.next is equal to null might not work, and you need to account for that, was when if you have something like this, in which case towards the very end, you have curl list pointing to this. And in this case, curl list.next is equal to null. You just need to make sure that you handle that gracefully, because in this scenario, your has next should still return true, because you do have a next, which is in this case 4, right?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for
So it's only when you're actually just pointing to the null do you not have a next. It's only when you're actually at null do you not have a next element. That's a good question though. Thank you for asking that. Someone asked, if you get to the kth element, are we not updating item to return the item for the kth element? Or am I understanding? Okay, yeah. So this is a pretty common question with this question, I guess. But essentially, you need to think about how we're approaching this problem. So we start with at the 0th index, right? So we want to return the 0th index regardless, because it always satisfies the property that we're checking for, which is why we start by just getting the 0th element and then we return that to begin with. But now the way we want to structure this is that we want to make sure that we move this pointer forward to the next kth element, simply because that's how we did it for 0. So we need to know that every time we do this, this item needs to satisfy the property that it is the kth element in the list, which is why this code should ensure that we're always advancing our pointer to the next kth element. Further questions?
Could you go over the case with the 0th element again? So why are we not entering the for loop for that one?
You are entering the for loop for that one. Essentially what I'm saying is that the 0th element by default would need to be returned, since it always satisfies the property that is the kth element, right? Because you return 0, kth element, 2 kth element, 3 kth element. You're always starting at 0, which is why by default you just want to start by getting the 0th item and then returning that. And now you just need to make sure that in your like loop over here, you're advancing your pointer to the kth item.
So like for this instance, okay, so like for the example, like where I'm confused is, don't we? Oh, okay, I get it. Okay, never mind. Yeah, I see it now. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to stop recording now.